California's plastic bag ban stands as one of the most revealing examples of how ambitious environmental policies can stumble when good intentions collide with economic and behavioral realities. For years, California has enjoyed its reputation as America's environmental vanguard, the first to regulate car emissions, push renewable energy mandates, and ban a host of environmentally harmful products. So when lawmakers passed the first statewide ban on single-use plastic bags in 2014, it seemed like yet another progressive milestone. But more than a decade later, the outcome looks far less inspiring, and in many ways, deeply ironic. The logic behind the ban seemed simple: stop people from using flimsy plastic bags that choke marine life and take centuries to decompose. In theory, the law would phase out disposable plastics and usher in a new era of reusables. But in practice, the law merely shifted the problem from one form to another. Retailers were allowed to offer thicker, reusable bags that technically met the letter of the law but violated its spirit. Because they were sturdier, these bags contained more plastic per unit. And because most consumers didn't actually reuse them, total plastic waste increased dramatically. According to state data, by 2021 Californians were throwing away 50% more plastic bags, by weight, than before the original ban took effect. It's a paradox rooted in human nature. Policymakers assumed that consumers would change habits overnight, that people would carefully wash, store, and reuse bags dozens of times. But behavior rarely shifts that easily. The convenience culture that made single-use bags so popular didn't vanish just because the state outlawed them. Instead, consumers adapted by buying thicker bags and discarding them just as quickly. The end result, a system that demanded more raw materials, more energy, and more landfill space. Then came the recyclable illusion. To appease critics, manufacturers stamped the familiar Chasing Arrows logo on their thicker plastic bags, implying they could be easily recycled. But the reality was far different. Most municipal recycling centers in California cannot process film plastics. The material gums up conveyor belts and forces costly shutdowns for cleaning and repair. Recycling operators were left pulling these bags out by hand and sending them to landfills anyway. The label might have eased consumer guilt, but it did little to solve the environmental problem. California's recent $1.7 million settlement with 4 plastic bag producers over misleading recyclability claims is a symbolic step toward accountability. Yet the settlement also underscores a fundamental flaw in the state's regulatory approach: its reliance on image over infrastructure. California legislators often lead with bans and mandates before ensuring the systems to support them exist. Whether it's recycling facilities, composting programs, or enforcement mechanisms, the practical groundwork lags behind the political headlines. Other states and cities, meanwhile, have found success through smaller, more targeted interventions. Washington, D.C.'s 5-cent bag tax, introduced in 2010, is one of the most effective examples. Without banning anything, the policy reduced bag usage by over 70% within a few years. Similar paper bag models in Seattle and Chicago yielded comparable results. These programs succeed because they align human behavior with economic incentive. People change their habits when it saves them money. A light financial nudge works better than a sweeping prohibition. California, however, has doubled down. A new law set to take effect next year will extend the ban to all plastic bags, regardless of thickness or composition. Supporters argue this is necessary to close loopholes. Critics warn it may once again lead to unintended consequences. If consumers switch en masse to paper bags, the state could face new environmental challenges, since paper production is water-intensive and generates significant carbon emissions. If they turn to imported alternatives made from synthetic materials, the global carbon footprint could grow rather than shrink. True environmental progress depends on a delicate balance of regulation, innovation, and education. The state should focus on fostering biodegradable materials, investing in local recycling technology, and supporting public awareness campaigns that encourage real behavior change. Consumers, too, need viable alternatives: affordable cloth bags, compostable packaging, or deposit return systems that reward sustainable choices. The lesson from California's plastic bag debacle is not that environmental policy is futile, but that policy without practicality is destined to fail. Real solutions must account for how people actually live, shop, and discard. Bans make headlines, incentives make habits. If California wants to remain a model for the nation, it must learn to craft policies that respect both the planet and the people who inhabit it, not just impose ideals that sound good on paper but crumble in practice. In the end, the path to sustainability isn't paved with bans and slogans but with thoughtful design, realistic expectations, and shared responsibility. California's experience should serve as a humbling reminder that progress isn't achieved through moral declarations, it's earned through careful, evidence-based policy that works with, not against, human nature.